Brand awareness matters, unless they're tired of you. Hi, I'm Nate Houseman, and it's my hope that if you're on this channel, you'll have the knowledge, news, and resources to succeed on your own terms in the 21st century. We're gonna go over the pop culture news of the day and entertainment, and the reason it matters is because politics flows downstream from the culture, and what they're doing, what the bigwigs and hoity-toity are doing in Broadway and Hollywood, they are increasingly losing their grip, and we're gonna see that in a few of the articles here. And most people are moving on to the internet. So let's start with E3. The Electronic Entertainment Expo has been around for really since the early 90s, and it used to be just, only the press were invited to it, not any gamers. But it's become less and less important over the last probably 5 or 10 years because gamers can get their news and updates just online. They don't have to wait every year for big reveals at the big press conferences. So, according to this article by TechCrunch, for the second year in a row, the show has gone all virtual, owing to, that virus that defined the past year and a half of our lives. Last year's show was canceled altogether, although a handful of companies still kept to the schedule, but show organizers simply didn't think they would be able to pull together a digital event. The 2021 event, which kicked off on Saturday, marks the first all-virtual version of the event. For the time being, it's also the last. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti kicked off the show by announcing that E3 would return to the LA Convention Center in 2022. Ever since Nintendo started doing their Nintendo Directs on, say, YouTube, they've been saving their big game announcements for those, and they pretty much made E3 obsolete. Nintendo used to dominate E3 by having the best presentations, but they saw the technology, they saw the way tech was moving, and they decided we're gonna reach people directly. Gaming had a banner 2020, and while growth has slowed as parts of the world look forward to a post-pandemic life, things are still growing. Some well-timed numbers from NPD this morning point to a 3% year-over growth for May 2021, as spending on gaming rose to $4.5 billion. Year-to-date, things are up 17%. The timing of last year's canceled event was certainly unfortunate from a hardware standpoint. The console refreshes were massive events at E3. 2020 gave us the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Announcements were relegated to Sony and Microsoft's own events. That meant the companies were able to draw things out, revealing small details, piece by piece, rather than saving everything for the big show. It's a strategy that lends itself much better to virtual presentations and blog posts than it does to big conventions. Sony is sitting this one out too. While it's entirely possible the company will be holding a big virtual state of play event at some point this summer, it won't be tied to E3. Still, some Sony execs, like PlayStation Studios head Herman Hulst, used the opportunity to congratulate Microsoft on a great showcase on Twitter, so that's a nice thing. Thus far, Microsoft has been the only one of the big three to present at the event, and they combined their event with Bethesda, which they, I believe they purchased in the last few months. Bethesda, love them or hate them, they've had a very rocky, probably 2 years after their Fallout 76 flop. Nintendo will be holding a Treehouse event tomorrow. Actually, it is today. It might be going on right as I record this. This is the dated article. The Switch Pro could be on tap for the event with an upgraded OLED display and internals. That would also likely mean a bunch of upgraded content for the new version of the 4-year-old console. Microsoft, meanwhile, went big on games. Understandable, given that the recent launch of the Series X. And let's face it, these virtual events are perfectly suited for playing a whole bunch of trailers. The company showcased 30 games and a fridge in all. Of those, 27 will be part of Xbox Game Pass, in case you had any doubt about what the future of gaming on the Xbox will look like. The event was framed as a combination Xbox and Bethesda showcase, having acquired the publisher earlier this year. Our growing family of 23 studios, that's significant. Microsoft and Xbox have purchased up a whole lot of indie developers, and our growing family of 23 studios is devoted to advancing the medium we all love, the company writes. So we were happy to share that now, through the end of the year, you can look forward to back-to-back monthly releases coming to Xbox Game Pass on day one, led by a record 5 new titles on Xbox Game Studios this holiday, including Halo Infinite. So, what Microsoft is doing with their Xboxes, they have the Xbox Series X. It's their new next generation console. But they're also expanding the Xbox brand to like PC and other devices like PC, mobile. I believe their previous gen Xbox and things like that. So really what they're doing is they're casting a wide net, which is opposite of what Sony's doing. Is they're focusing on the PS5 while still trying to sell the PS4. And it's probably the current situation in gaming probably favors Xbox. I mean, they're saying that the PS5 is selling gangbusters, but that's probably because of all the scalpers who are like buying them up with bots on the online stores. These companies, well, Nintendo probably not, but Xbox and PlayStations are sold at a loss. It costs more for these companies to make the PCs than it does to sell them. What they do is they make their money by selling games. So they have in-house studios like the ones that Microsoft bought up, and they have agreements with third-party studios to get like a little percentage of those game sales. Now, the Xbox Series X is being bought up by scalpers as well, but because they're spread out, because their system is not limited to just that one piece of hardware, they can afford to sell games. They're able to sell their games throughout the internet. PS5 is probably in the clutches of all these scalpers who are like who are marking them up like probably 100% or more. So Sony is not able to make money on games with them so far. So there's talk about Sony's going back on their words on generations. Like they're going to be focused on the PS5, but they're being forced to develop games that are PS4 compatible, because where else are they going to sell them? So Halo Infinite got a trailer and some in-game multiplayer footage. So who plays Halo anymore? Kind of feels like the series topped out of the at number 3 is like a nice concise trilogy. Starfield will be arriving in November of 2022. Deep breath. Starfield is Bethesda's latest property. Bethesda also runs the Fallout series, and the Elder Scrolls. And Elder Scrolls Skyrim has just been repeatedly recycled over and over. Forza, that's the Xbox's racing series. Sea of Thieves by Rare, which Xbox bought from Nintendo years ago. Age of Empires. Battlefield 4042. This is titled by EA, Electronic Arts, and they're pushing hard that it's going to be on Xbox. One of the reasons Sony dominated the last generation is because they had all the marketing on the third-party games. Like they pretty much got first dibs on advertising all the third-party games and saying, hey, they're on PlayStation. So that's one reason. Microsoft Flight Simulator, Square Enix. Now, Square was like the premier role-playing game developer back in the 90s. Like they had like Final Fantasy, they had Chrono Trigger. The first RPG I ever played was Super Mario RPG, which was a joint venture by Square and Nintendo. And a lot of people think they've lost their mojo in the 21st century because they're pretty much just banking on the Final Fantasy franchise and sometimes Kingdom Hearts. And they also made developed an Avengers game. Was it 1 or 2 years ago, which was a total dud because Avengers Endgame came out in 2019, the movie, and a lot of people felt, okay, that kind of wraps up the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Why are we interested in the Avengers anymore? And now Square Enix is also working on a Guardians of the Galaxy game, which is not necessarily based on the movies. And same for Black Panther. And we're gonna get to Disney and their Marvel projects a little bit later. But really, how many people are still interested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Like, how many people are watching Scarlet Vision or Falcon and Winter Soldier? How many people are excited for the Black Widow movie? How many people are watching Loki on Disney Plus? I don't have Disney Plus because I'm a cheapskate. I spend my money on marketing software, but I hear from a lot of other YouTubers that Marvel has gone super deep into the identity politics, and they're losing their grip on the audience. Wouldn't be a Square Enix event without a Final Fantasy spinoff. Let's see. Here's Ubisoft. Ubisoft made waves on Saturday with a first look at the new Avatar adaptation, Frontiers of Pandora. Pandora came out in 2009, and we're still waiting for a sequel. I watched the movie first on Blu-ray, and I just thought it was so hackneyed. I mean, the visuals were great, were fabulous, but the story was just like kind of offensive to me as a human being. And when the movie came out, was released in theaters, I wanted just to check out the 3D, and I walked out around the time the Navi, right after Sully bet Navi, or no, Neytiri, that's her name. Because I thought, this is just derivative. All right. Rainbow Six. How many people are playing Rainbow Six? Tom Clancy, he's not even alive anymore, is he? I don't think so. The Xbox mini fridge. Interesting. Well, that's the roundup of E3 so far. We'll have to look at Nintendo later on. There are a few indie games that are being highlighted at E3. This is from Games Radar. There are games like 12 Minutes, Ghosts, Last Stop, Palia, which is supposed to be Animal Crossing inspired. Skin Deep, what is this? You should always pay attention to what Blendo Games is up to. Okay, they were probably well thought of. The company is responsible for the most innovative indie games of all time, from 30 Flights of Loving to Quadrilateral Cowboy. There's Ascent. These are pretty much indie games that have kind of built up their own niches. I don't see any breakout stars from these from this list of studios, but that just goes to show how pretty much out of touch I am with gaming. I used to be a huge gamer until 2009, when that was around the time I turned 30, and something just kind of switched off in my brain. But I do respect independent developers much more than the big corporate AAA game publishers, because these people are doing it for themselves. They're making their own way. So you might get a breakout title like Among Us or or what's the other one recently? Fall Guys. And it really depends on the influencers, like the people who are like playing on Twitch or playing live streaming on YouTube or Facebook. And that's one of the reasons I'm talking about gaming is because gaming has overtaken Hollywood movies as far as like revenue. So this is like if you're like if you're like a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer, video game content is ready made for you. You can like record yourself playing these games and making your own fun and doing commentary, and that's one of the biggest advantages to gaming. It's like it empowers the people. So if you find a formula, if you find a gameplay loop or a hook that really hooks in the masses, you can be a hit. Switching gears. Box office. In the Heights disappoints with $11 million opening weekend. In the Heights is based off of a Broadway musical, and I've seen the commercials for this movie, and it just didn't speak to me. Just personally, for a long time, I just thought musicals were kind of like fluff and really sappy. The only musicals I really enjoy in my life were Little Shop of Horrors and South Park: Bigger, Longer, Uncut. So, and I think after the Cats film came out, I think a couple years ago, a lot of people realized, maybe Broadway isn't as great a storyteller as we used to think. I mean, Broadway used to be very isolated. You had to go to New York, buy tickets to go see the musical in the theater, and only a few of them were ever adapted to Hollywood movies. And you might see musical numbers at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on NBC, along with whatever dance number the Rockettes were doing. But that might have been most people's only exposure to Broadway. And people just aren't connecting with this movie, even though it was made by the creator of Hamilton. All right. In a surprise defeat, Paramount's A Quiet Place Part 2 returned to the number one spot in its third outing with $11.65 million in dollars and 3,800 screens. The disappointing commercial reception for In the Heights is puzzling because critics embraced the joyous film. Well, that's your first problem. People don't trust the critics anymore. They showered it with some of the best reviews of the pandemic era. Moreover, Warner Brothers put substantial marketing heft behind the picture, and director John M. Chu and Miranda, that's Lin-Manuel Miranda, the creator of Hamilton, and devoted a great deal of energy into promoting the movie, which compensated for the fact that its cast was comprised of mostly unknown stars and emerging actors. Though it's impossible to know the full impact, the film's hybrid release on HBO Max likely affected its box office business. However, that's not the whole reason that inaugural ticket sales for In the Heights were underwhelming. Recent Warner Brothers releases like Godzilla vs. Kong, Mortal Kombat, and The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, still pulled in solid receipts, despite being offered simultaneously on streaming. But as audiences slowly make their way back to theaters, box office charts have indicated that people are more inclined to show up for properties with higher brand recognition. Though the Tony Award-winning In the Heights is not an original property like La La Land or The Greatest Showman, it's not as well known as Miranda's other musical sensation Hamilton, or even Rent, Les Miserables, or Cats. Like I said, Cats probably ruined it for a lot of Broadway adaptations. If you go to Deadline's article about In the Heights, they make a very astute observation here. They refer to this third-party rating system called Samba TV, and they notice that In the Heights HBO Max audience skewed affluent, those who earn six figures and above. Female, 4%, non-white, and Asian. Of the 25 largest domestic audiences, San Francisco over-indexed the most by far, followed by the DMA that includes this movie setting, New York City. New York City was by far the #1 theatrical market, as well as for the feature musical. So there's kind of a rarefied ivory tower air to Broadway. Usually Broadway was limited to just, New Yorkers and affluent New Yorkers who could afford the ticket prices. It's kind of like the modern day opera. So maybe unless there's like a big, long drawn out, marketing campaign with bankable movie stars, bankable stars, or names attached to it, regular people just aren't going to relate. And depending on which streaming service you're on, it may or may not eat into the box office. I do know, in the next article, Disney's pivot to prioritizing streaming is working out just fine, thanks. This is from Gizmodo. Disney has been a little slow to come back to theaters. They don't want to pay theaters their cut. They're very focused on their Disney Plus app. They're pushing out content from the Marvel franchises. They're working on, The Mandalorian, the Star Wars series. That was a big hit. And they've got so much Marvel and Star Wars content planned. It's like they've got stories for years. Will people glom onto it, or will they? Or are they tired of it? Kind of depends on whether they lock into that universal human idealism that drove the success of these properties. Star Wars was based on the hero's journey, that famous work about how every adventure story in history kind of revolves around certain plot points. George Lucas based the story on that paradigm. And Marvel Comics, what made them great, thanks to Stan Lee's writing, was he made characters that were relatable. They were human. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, they call him the world's greatest superhero because he's the most human superhero, despite his powers. He's just a freelancing working schlub trying to make his way in the world, and he's the ultimate underdog. So, and the question is, will Disney stay true to those human ideals? There's talk about identity politics. You can't have white male cisgender straights be the heroes anymore because that's so played out. I mean, a lot of people don't care. They just care if the person's a compelling character. I mean, I saw Black Panther and I loved it. Black Panther was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. I know Jack Kirby was Jewish. I'm not sure if Stan Lee was, but he first appeared in a Fantastic Four story, and he was a hit, and everyone loved him. They didn't care. They probably cared that he was African, but he appealed to people on a much deeper level. He was a concerned leader who was trying to protect his country. So let's go to the article here. For anyone who is worried about the health of the new direct-to-consumer emphasis of Disney's business model, worry no more. During a virtual conference appearance on Monday, Disney CEO Bob Chapek touted the success of the company's recent reorganization, saying that the decision to shift energy towards the creation and distribution of content for streaming has yielded healthy sales figures thus far. Despite how profound that change was for us, relative to how we operated and particularly how the industry operated, it really has got strong buy-in by our execs, Chapek told the Credit Suisse annual communications conference on Monday, according to the Hollywood Reporter. Everyone appreciates the fact They have more time to do what they do best, given the increase in output we have. In October 2020, Chapek announced the creation of the newly minted Media and Entertainment Distribution Group, which was to be tasked with handling and dissemination of ad sales for all of Disney content, including across streaming services like Disney+. Part of that strategy, according to Chapek, was to free up time to allow the company's creative teams to, quote, concentrate on what they do best, making world-class franchise-based content. Yep. So, under the leadership of the previous CEO, Bob Iger, Disney acquired a lot of other companies. They bought Fox, they bought Disney, they bought Star Wars. They did, produce some original content like Frozen and Moana. I mean, those are great hits, but a lot of it's focused on existing IP, basing it on sequels or existing properties. So we'll have to see what Bob Chapek does. But Chapek is known as a bean counter. He cares about the bottom line, and he kind of has to be because Disney is deep in debt after the pandemic. It cut off their theme park revenue, and it cut off their theater revenue, and it cut off sporting events. Disney owns ESPN, so Bob Chapek, he's got to watch the bottom line. So far, that strategy seems to be working. Marvel Studios alone, helmed by Kevin Feige, has seemingly been pumping out enough original content to power a streaming service or a small country all by itself, with a slate that will soon include the yet-to-be-released Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk, and Armor Wars series, to name just a few. So, I do know that we don't know Disney's internal streaming numbers for Disney+. Like, they keep that private. So we really can't know how popular each show is. We can only go by leaks from inside the company, and they're reported to like pop culture rumor websites like Doomcock or who else? WDW Pro. He or she is a contributor to several pop culture websites. There's supposedly a Disney insider who's supposed to be anonymous, so that's WDW Pro. That's someone to look up. So, I talked about Disney's theme park income. Disney's theme parks have been kind of like their trying to think of the word. I wouldn't say cash cow, but kind of like their Disney's fallback option. Whenever things aren't going well in TV and movies and other entertainment, they can always fall back on the revenue from the theme parks because people, they bring people in. So, Disney World in Florida, this is from the Points guy, Disney World drops the mask mandate for vaccinated guests as of June 15th, which is today. On Friday morning, Walt Disney World released the news parkgoers have been waiting for. As of June 15th, guests who are fully vaccinated are no longer required to wear masks in most areas. The mask optional policy for the fully vaccinated covers both indoor and outdoor areas of the park, excluding Disney transportation, buses, monorails, and the Disney Skyliner. Non-vaccinated guests are still asked to wear face coverings while indoors and outdoors. Florida currently has a ban on businesses and government agencies in the state requiring proof of COVID-19 vaccination, so guests won't be required to show a vaccine card or passport. That's very important. However, unvaccinated guests are expected to comply with the current policy and help keep themselves, other guests, and employees safe throughout the visit. Everyone on social media is like up in arms over the vaccine. Is it legit? Is it really is it really a globalist plan to depopulate the human race? Is it safe? Are we going through the testing right now? So I think I did take the vaccine, and I kind of had to because I was told I wouldn't be able to visit certain relatives. I wouldn't be allowed to visit certain relatives if I did it. But I'm really concerned with the vaccine because I did have COVID last December, and for me, it wasn't that bad. Some people have died. Some people have some people have probably had other conditions go along with it. We don't. There is so much conflicting information in the news. Um, we don't we don't know the actual death rate is propped up by statistics, and everyone everyone everyone's saying that this was probably a psyop, but let you make your own decision. So, after the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued updated guidance in May that those who are vaccinated can safely cease wearing masks, in most situations, many theme parks began rolling back mask mandates. Almost immediately, Hershey Park dropped its masking mandates rules for guests who are fully vaccinated. Hershey Park, that's the Hershey Chocolate Park in Pennsylvania. Las Vegas casinos also stopped requiring vaccinated guests to wear masks. And Universal Orlando and Disney World were close to follow with the announcement that guests could go maskless. So, final paragraph. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis issued an executive order earlier in May canceling remaining local COVID-19 restrictions, including mask mandates in public areas. But privately owned businesses can still require masks on their private property. Disney and Universal Orlando both phased out temperature checks at entry points. And as more U.S. residents become vaccinated and CDC guidelines continue to evolve as we head into the summer, have continued to roll back on policies such as mask mandates. So, that's Florida. Ron DeSantis, Florida is booming right now. People are moving there because Governor DeSantis, he's led the way on opening things up. Compare that to the home state of Disneyland, California. And California Governor Gavin Newsom announced his timeline to end parts of the COVID-related executive orders, but not state of emergency. This is from, I believe, last Thursday, June 11th. No, Friday. On Friday morning, California Governor Gavin Newsom promised he would be releasing details of our efforts to wind down all these executive orders. Several hours later, he did just that. Newsom announced action to lift pandemic executive orders as the state moves beyond the blueprint next week to reopen. That includes terminating the stay-at-home order that was implemented early in the pandemic to protect Californians and retiring the blueprint for a safer economy, the governor wrote. Effective June 15th, restrictions such as physical distancing, capacity limits, and the county tier system will end. The governor said, however, this is important, that a subset of provisions that facilitate the ongoing recovery, such as the provision allowing pharmacy technicians to administer vaccinations, will remain in place. Why? The termination of certain provisions of my COVID-19 related executive orders during this stage of the emergency would compound the effects of the emergency and impede the state's recovery by disrupting important governmental and social functions, wrote the governor. That means the state of emergency that gives Newsom the power to issue such orders will likely remain in place. That declaration has become increasingly controversial of late, with 3 California lawmakers threatening to end it if Newsom does not. Newsom countered by pointing out that the state of emergency related to several long-snuffed California wildfires remains in effect even now to aid with the recovery. This goes to show, you got to be in touch with the people you're either serving or selling to. People, respond to, policies towards freedom, towards, the basics, the basic human knowledge of right and wrong. People know the difference between right and wrong. They don't necessarily know it's true, but they know intuitively what's right in the world. So if you appeal to that, if you hit that, chord, people will go along with you. It's as simple as that. It goes for, entertainment. It goes for culture. It goes for the economy, which I'll be talking about in another video. It goes into so much. So with that, I will end this video. I'll be putting up videos later today about the economy. It's my hope that you get some knowledge out of this. If you find this content valuable, please share it. Hit the like button, hit the follow button, and you can go to my website, natehausman.net, and find a lot of other great content that I curate from other great sources. So long for now.